There's a common misconception that to go faster on track, it's about working harder and pushing our limits each time we head out there. But what if I told you that there are several ways to gain substantial time on track relatively easily? And when I say easily, I mean without having to push your personal limits or go any closer to the limits of grip than you already are. Sound too good to be true? I get it. What I've just said goes against so much of how people think about riding. You know, the bite down and send it approach. But in track riding, you can go much quicker simply by riding smarter, not harder. And in this video, I'm going to share 5 mistakes that many track riders make that when solved will mean big improvements in your confidence, how fast you're riding, and ultimately what the lap timer is showing you. And these will be some of the easiest things to implement while bringing some of the biggest gains, particularly for early stage riders. And number 5 may surprise you because it goes against what many people focus on in their riding. Feel free to drop a comment down below and have a guess what it is and see if you're right later on. Okay, let's jump in and tackle mistake number 1, coasting in the braking zones. Firstly, let's define coasting. Well, my definition is simply that the rider is spending too much time without any meaningful acceleration or braking taking place. And the area where this is most apparent is in the big braking zones. Riders will often roll off too early on the approach to a corner, travel a considerable distance before getting on the brakes, and when they do get on the brakes, it's a light application that slowly builds as they get closer to that corner. What this is doing is wasting massive time where you could be accelerating for longer down the straight and braking later. A common reason for this is simply that the rider doesn't have confidence in their braking. Because they're unsure of being able to slow the bike down for the corner, they'll roll off very far away from it. However, when they do, they quickly realize that this is way too early, leading to this long, drawn-out braking routine. What you might also find is that because they're building the brake pressure up to the point where they're braking quite hard close to the corner, they already feel like they're braking as late as they dare, making them feel like they're already on their limit. To fix this, we need to change 2 things. First is to cut down the time from rolling off the throttle to getting on the brakes. The time it takes you to go from full throttle to that first initial small application of brakes should be fast. You're working to do that as fast as you can without rushing it. And 2, flip the current braking routine on its head. Once initial braking is applied, you need to build up to your higher level of braking quickly and progressively, meaning you're getting your hardest braking done earlier in the braking phase instead of later. This gives you a greater sense of composure because your brakes are tapering off nicely as you're approaching the corner, and it'll massively help with how much later you can brake too. If you brake at your existing point, but this time build up to your heaviest braking quickly like I just described, you'll instantly realize you're braking way too early, making it easier to move your braking point back because you now have greater perspective. And from there, you'll begin taking big chunks of time in the braking zones just by changing how and when you use the brakes. Moving on to mistake number 2, not knowing how to steer. Now, this one might seem a bit silly because every rider can get a bike around a corner. However, a lot of riders don't truly have an awareness of how they do that, and it limits what they're able to do on track because they don't have conscious control. And this lack of control will often manifest in slow steering actions across the board, which is going to hurt them in a number of places. For example, a slow steering action is going to lead you to entering a lot of corners on a shallow entry line, which spoils your exit because it means you're waiting a long time for the bike to turn and point up the track before you can pick it up and drive out. Something we'll talk about more in a minute. Or in chicanes, where the rider's lazy action forces them to go slower because steering rate is a key to speed in sections of track like this. On the flip side, when you know how to change direction, it opens up a world of confidence in being able to put the bike where you want and to change your approach to suit each situation because your new level of control opened up more options. Now, there is a school of thought that this is something that you don't really need to teach and that riders just kind of figure it out as they go, but I disagree. We teach how to use every other control in riding, so why not steering? And I'm going to make it nice and simple for you. Forget about using your body or pressing on the pegs to change direction. Instead, just focus on what you're doing with the bars. Want the bike to lean to the right? Press on the right bar. Want it to lean to the left? Press on the left bar. Want it to stand up? If you're in a corner, just pull on that inside bar and the bike is going to stand up. Then there's your rate of steering. If you want a slow steering action, press lightly. Want the bike to change direction quicker? Then be firmer with the pressure you apply. It's really that simple. Now, there will be nuance in how you apply this pressure in different situations, but that's it on a basic level. And even understanding that and getting a feel for it can do wonders for giving you greater confidence and control, allowing you to make a much better use of the space you have. Next is poor exit performance. When I say that, many people's minds will naturally fixate on the idea that they just need to be braver and accelerate harder off the corners. But so much of your corner exit potential comes from factors outside of how brave you are with your right hand. One of them I alluded to earlier. If your entry line is too shallow, you're going to be waiting a long time at corner exits for the bike to be pointed up the track, delaying your drive, which hurts you out of the corner and all the way down the following straight. Similarly, if you're not using all the space at corner entry or you're missing your apex by 10 feet, you're going to hurt your exit drive in the same way. And one huge aspect that people rarely talk about is your throttle timing. A lot of riders have a tendency to begin rolling on the throttle in the middle of the corner too soon, before their line is properly set for corner exit. If you do that, you're inevitably going to run wide and once again be left waiting and waiting for the bike to point in the right direction, once again spoiling your exit. Instead, you need to be patient in the middle of the corner and wait until the line is set, and only when you've done that should you then crack the throttle to stabilize your speed before beginning your progressive exit drive. Do not underestimate the importance of exit drive when it comes to gaining time, even on smaller machines. And just by tweaking how you're using the space and your throttle timing, you can take massive chunks off your lap times without having to be any braver on the throttle. And as a side note, a good way to approach this is to get your exits right first, then work to get into the corners quicker and quicker without affecting that corner exit plan. So the first three mistakes we've covered here create the potential for speed, but when you fix this next one, it facilitates it. Mistake 4 is not using your eyes correctly. Many riders aren't thinking too much about where they look, instead just focusing on the next thing to take their attention at any point in time. And it makes it difficult to progress from this point because they already feel on their limit. Instead, by having a clear visual map while at the same time getting your eyes up and further ahead of you, time slows down and you feel much calmer and in control because you now have a better understanding of the time and space ahead of you. Truthfully, we can talk all we want about the mechanics of riding, but if you aren't using your eyes correctly, it's difficult to do any of it because you simply don't have the mental capacity to. Bring a new level of calm by giving your mind a better view of what's ahead, and you'll be amazed at how it changes your performance and how you feel too. And finally, mistake number 5, thinking body position is the answer. I've had enough questions and done enough analysis over the years to know that many people overestimate the difference that it makes to their performance in the early days. And it's often the first thing they look at. And I get it. They can't necessarily see the other things they're doing wrong, but most people can look at a photo and see if something's off. Now, I'm not suggesting that body position isn't important. It's a fundamental skill of riding, and we want to use our bodies in a way that gives the bike what it wants while allowing ourselves to use it effectively. This means correctly setting up our lower body as a base to move around, engaging your legs and core to create stability while keeping your arms relaxed, and moving your upper body in a way that offsets lean angle and allows you to properly use the controls. How that looks will be different for different riders, and for me, as long as you're achieving these things while in a relatively neutral position, you're doing okay. Just don't get too hung up on trying to look a certain way, like trying to achieve the positions of the young guns in MotoGP, for example. It's bloody hard, and if your body isn't up to it, you can still go very fast without looking like that. So, as we run through these things, I hope the penny is starting to drop that speed on the track doesn't just come from gritting your teeth and sending it. In fact, in the beginning, it's quite the opposite, and that's the biggest lesson I want you to take from this. The lesson that, as a learning rider, you should be working to reach a level of confidence and control first, and when you have that, then you can look more closely at how you extract more from the bike in terms of how much brake, lean angle, and acceleration potential you're using. And that's when things go to a whole nother level, and it's something we talk about in this video here where we explore where pro riders really gain time around the track. Which of these mistakes have you made, or do you have any others that you want to share? Let us know in the comments down below. But outside of that, thank you so much for watching this one, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.